Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Make sure I can see everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much. We are expecting even more people to join us, and I love the people extra who are on time, so I appreciate it. My name is Renee Angelo Mock. I am here today from Mentor Maryland TC to share with you the new critical mentoring supplement to the elements of effective practice for best practices in mentoring. And this training today has been put on in partnership with the Y Central Maryland. So we appreciate the Y Central Maryland for partnering with us to put this on for you today. Oh my God. Whoa. I didn't know I could do that. We're back. All right. If you're not familiar with Mentor Maryland DC, and if you are, I'm going to say it anyway. We are the regional affiliate of the National Mentoring Partnership. So regional being we cover Maryland and DC, and along with our about 24 affiliates across the USA, we are here to uplift the urgency of the cause of mentoring. And we want to ensure that there is high quality and enough mentoring relationships across Maryland and DC to close that mentoring gap, meaning we want to ensure that all young people in Maryland, all of them, have as many caring adults as possible in their lives, and that mentoring programs have everything they need to do that work well. So that's us. We're here for you, and we are your local experts to give you this opportunities like this, which is like information, but we do even more than that. Advocacy. We're just at Capitol Hill in January, advocating to our representatives and Congress people about the cause of mentoring, public awareness campaigns, and all kinds of stuff. So that's just a few of the things that we do as your regional affiliate. Even more things that we do, connection to the National Mentoring Partnership. So we just had our National Mentoring Summit in January. If you were there, let us know in the chat. Probably saw you. You probably saw me. Connection with our no-cost technical assistance. I know that some of our consultants are here. I saw you, Jeff Walker, come in. So we'll talk more about that, because this is hopefully going to inspire you to get some of that no-cost technical assistance, because that's an opportunity to connect with one of our expert consultants to work one-on-one with your program for a bank of hours, up to 50 hours, about what your program needs, what that might be specific to your program. So it's really, really awesome. So Mentor Maryland DC, we run our regional mentoring connector. The mentoring connector is a national database where mentors and young people can go to find mentoring programs, for prospective mentors to find mentoring programs to mentor at. So if your mentoring program is not in the mentoring connector, get at it. And these are all links. So when I send this out to you, you can click on those. Obviously, local trainings like this, element of effective practice. We're here to talk about that today, and that's something that we'll always be talking about, or I'll always be talking about for sure, as your local lead for training, access to the National Quality Mentoring System. So that is part of the National Mentoring Resource Center, a national standard quality for mentoring, that if you connect with one of our consultants, you can help, you can see where your kind of program stands for that system, and with a consultant, build a program improvement plan, so you can get even higher on that system. And that is kind of like a national badge of approval of quality, which is really exciting, and something we encourage our program to do every few years. When I say that we want to ensure your program has everything you need, that includes, connection to funding opportunities. So when we know about those things, we want to get that information to you. Okay. All right. Basic logistics about the internet. This is Zoom. We appreciate your space and grace in the virtual environment. It's crazy up here. The internet is crazy. Use these reactions. It's so fun. Find that reaction button and play around. Let me see those emojis. Raise your hand if you'd like to make a comment. Type in the chat. Keep the chat lively, please. And yeah, in the chat too, you can send a message to everyone. If you need help, you can send a message to me with that little drop down and go to my name, Michael Molly McCaskill. Wave, Michael Molly. Have you seen Michael Molly's face? They are my tech support here today. They are the AmeriCorps Vista for school-based mentoring, and they're amazing. So they are my backup support today. So if you need tech support and I am busy facilitating, please reach out to them via the chat. Cool. So newly agreed upon community standards here at Mentor Maryland DC, we want to invite you all to be a part of. So the goal of these trainings and our online professional development spaces is we want to create community in these spaces, and we want these we believe that community is the cure, the foundation for learning, and we want to ensure that everyone feels seen and heard and understood. So we want to, oh my goodness, what is going on? Sorry. And we know that our youth want this too. So we want to go over some community standards that we're expecting from you and that we want to promise to you as well as facilitators in this space. So these are standards that we've agreed upon as Mentor Maryland DC, and we want to invite you in for as well. Our community is open to all, everyone. And we stand against all this isms, and we work actively to work to this aim, especially with our young people. And this is how we approach our work, and everyone is welcome here, period. We invite you all to share openly and to listen even more openly, and be open to when you're sharing might be hurtful. So be aware of that. Be generous with your positive assumptions, and don't be afraid to ask generous questions. No matter what your role today, be a host. When you get into our other spaces, we're going to have breakout rooms today. Consider yourself a host as well. We want to host you. We want to be a host to everybody who comes in and think about what it means to be a host. Not every space here today is going to be a safe or comfortable space. We want spaces to be brave, and where discomfort can be explored and beliefs and practices be challenged. We're going to have a lot of new information today, and a lot of discussion and thought-provoking today. So yeah, that requires being brave, and we believe in you, and we can do it together. And we want this community and experience to be supportive and educational, but also fun, for sure. And we believe that's why people continue to come back to these kind of things. So we hope you bring your full and present self. And this last one, no fixing, saving, advising, or correcting. This is one of the touchstones for developing trust framework. It's a little bit self-explanatory, but it's the idea that if you feel the need to deliver feedback to someone else, ask for permission. And it really has to do with trusting people's inner teacher to guide them through these spaces. But I really encourage you to look up the touchstones for developing trust frameworks. They're amazing. So these are community standards. Myself and anybody from Mentor Maryland DC who's on this call, we're going to do our best to uphold these standards, and we ask that you do too. And if there's violation of these standards, we are going to follow through to do what we need to do to uphold these standards and make this space adhere to these standards. Cool. So now we are going to jump into the critical metric with a video from Dr. Tori.
Critical mentoring was really developed out of necessity. It was developed because we live in a context.
Yeah, I lied. I'm gonna do a poll first. I'm actually gonna stop my share really quick because we're gonna do a poll. 1, who is here today? Who are you? I'm Renee, program Irish Support Mentor, Mentor Maryland DC. I want to know who is here. So I'm gonna bring up a poll. Here we go. Who is here today? Are you a program leader or executive, program staff member? Are you a mentor? Are you a young person? Are you and your young person here today? This will help inform me what kind of conversations we may be able to get into, how this information may land with you as far as decision making. And yeah, let's get at it. All right, we're at 72% participation, almost 80%. Oh yeah. Can we get to 85%? Come on, 2 more people. Let's do it. 10 more seconds. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Ending this poll, and I'll share results. We have a half program leaders here, which is great, as a lot of this will have to do with potential decision-making at programs. So great to see you here. Welcome. And program staff as well. Wonderful. Program staff, I hope that you are in positions where program leaders are going to be listening to you, and mentors as well. Please advocate on behalf of your young people and on behalf of you, because programs are lucky to have you and they want to retain you. You are extremely valuable. You make mentoring programs. Mentoring programs don't exist without mentors. So mentors, thank you for joining. Really happy you're here and appreciate you very much. Wonderful. And I have another poll that I'm not going to do just yet. So now we're going to jump into a video from Dr. Torrey.
Critical mentoring was really developed out of necessity. It was developed because critical mentoring was really developed out of necessity. It was developed because we live in a context, exist in a context where we have to think constantly about race, gender, sexuality, ability, class, etc. Then we also have nonprofit systems, specifically mentoring and youth development organizations, that don't really explicitly deal with that. That was true in 2017 when I wrote the Critical Mentoring book, and on some level, it's still true today in 2022. So as we think about critical mentoring and the work that it requires of us, it's really about thinking about how we enter spaces. It's really exploring who we are, our biases, our thoughts. It's really exploring our limitations, how we interact and navigate through systems, really thinking historically and even in a very modern way about our context. I think most importantly, it's about taking all of that information and applying it to who we are as mentors, as teachers, who we are as administrators, or any person who is coming into contact with or working with young people. Critical Mentoring 2.0 really shouldn't exist. But since it does, we have to think about what it means to shift our gaze, to shift our hopes, and on some level, to even think about what it means to radically freedom dream. We can't keep doing what we were doing. We have to recreate, we have to reimagine, we have to rebuild. And so Critical Mentoring 2.0 is really about taking that foundational theory of centering young people, of talking openly and explicitly about race, about class, and all of those other sort of isms. And it's about thinking, how do we recreate and reimagine spaces where young people can be free and where we can be free as well.
So drop a 1 in the chat if you are familiar with Dr. Torrey, or if you have read Dr. Torrey's book that she's referring to, the original Critical Mentoring book. All right. Great. So we have some familiarity with Dr. Torrey. So Dr. Torrey is the author of the original book, Critical Mentoring, and she's given us some idea about what that is, right? Having to do with intersectionality and young people. So we're going to get a little bit into the history, and then we'll talk more about some of the foundational theory before we get into the actual supplement part. Now, I'm just seeing an error on my slide that we're about to come into. Please ignore it. It's a formatting thing. It's okay. Okay. So the history. So too often mentors were being cited as a type of savior for youth experiencing marginalization, and programs were being touted as a fix-all for social ills. So talk about the real history of mentoring and how mentoring really got started in the United States. There is a book. I'm looking at my shelf to find the name. There's a book about the real origins of mentoring, and that's truly what it was. It was a savior thing that specifically, particularly positions wealthy white people, potentially, really, as saviors of poor, poor and the marginalized, right? And really this paradigm helped mentors feel good about supporting young people, but again, did very little to rectify the conditions that they were being forced to navigate, right? If we're talking about rich people helping poor people, does that rectify the conditions of which there are rich people and poor people? No. And she talks about this hopefulness that by fixing young people, we fix the future. But this ignores the historical and present context of those isms that she's talking about, right? Racism, poverty, homo antagonism, and the pressing issues that our society is confronted. So if you've read the original Critical Mentoring, she talks about this, how can we help youth if there's this toxic air, right? If we're trying to help young people, but the air that they breathe and the conditions that they're in, but the conditions that they're in are toxic, how are we really able to assist them? If, they go to schools that are systemically underfunded, or where teachers are biased, where it's unsafe, and this, that, and the other. So how can we ignore the context in which our young people live? How can mentoring truly help? And that's kind of what is being posed as. So what critical mentoring does, it provides what we need as mentors or mentoring programs, youth workers, to create these spaces where young people can develop into who they really are. And rooted in this work are the ideas, like Dr. Tor was saying in the video, the ideas that we have to acknowledge this intersectionality and what makes us all up: race, class, gender, ability, sexuality, how that impacts our young people, and the ways that we work with them, because it does. And we can't ignore those things. If you've been to the training we did last year about cultural humility, right? Is that we have to acknowledge these things about ourselves as mentors, and we have to give opportunity for our young people to acknowledge those things about themselves. And mentoring, we have to shift mentoring away from the traditional hierarchy, those power dynamics, and mentoring has to become more collaborative, where mentors and young people, it's less about this power dynamic where the mentor has power and it's all about the mentor giving something, and it's more collaborative. And therefore it becomes this liberatory framework that Dr. Tor you'll hear her say more than once. Unfortunately, I wish I had more videos Dr. Tor showed today, but there's more opportunities for that. And that youth should be centered in their own work. In their own work, I mean, in everything that has to do with mentoring programs, youth should be centered in that. And very often we are either centering mentors or we're centered in it because we're the ones planning the mentoring program, writing grants for funding, this, that, and the other. So how do we center youth in the work that is about them, right? Cassandra, what's your question? I've heard of that book. Actually, no, I've read the book. Leave your question in chat. I'm going to move on to the next slide. So the build is here. Oh, hold on. There we go. So this is critical mentoring here. This is the building blocks of what critical mentoring. Oh, no, I'm still talking about Dr. Tor's. Oh no, it's not. I'm going to find it out when you guys go into the breakout room. Because I know it's on my bookshelf, right? Like literally right there. So the building blocks of critical mentoring and what we're trying to get to if we have a critical mentoring program. So this idea of critical reflection. So this is what we want to be building in young people. Critical reflection, the opportunity for young people to engage in meaningful thought and dialogue about their experiences and how they interact with systems and institutions. How do we get young people the opportunity to think about that and think about where they are in the world and how these things are affecting them as young people? Collective identification. So again, that sense of identity and belonging to a group. This is something that I know you've heard me say before, that I know I've talked about in other trainings, and that we know from data, particularly for youth with marginalized identities, it's really important for them to have opportunities to explore their identity and to have positive associations with their identities. Because we also know that for youth with marginalized identities, that they often are getting very negative associations with their identities, right? From media, from maybe from teachers, maybe from authority figures and the like. So we want to build this collective identification from whatever they're belonging, whatever those very, different identity markers, that is a positive sense of identity and a belonging to the different groups that they may belong to. That collective identification. Political self-efficacy. I also want to say, we're talking about theory, right? Which is why I feel like so many of these words sound really, I don't want to say hoity-toity. What am I trying to say, y'all? We are talking about like a social theory. So it sounds like this is really rooted in research. Dr. Tori, I mean, she's Dr. Tori. she wrote a book, guys. She's really smart. This is based in real social theory and the like. So while this, I feel like sounds, I don't know, I don't want anyone to feel excluded from this topic because I feel like it sounds so, I don't know, bookish or whatever. But this applies to, you'll see how it can apply to all of our programs, no matter what work we're doing. But anyway, political self-efficacy just means from moving from reflection towards action, right? So we got this critical reflection part. We are learning about we're reflecting on our experiences. So now, the idea that we're building up our feelings so that we can go into the world and make positive change happen, right? So a young person has thought about what their experiences are. They've now understood how they're relating to systems and institutions and how systems and institutions relate to them. And maybe it's not that great, right? Not all systems and institutions are serving young people to the best of their ability. And now they're going to do something about it. Whatever that might be. Could be a huge political action, right? Or it could be a smaller piece of self-advocacy. Political self-advocacy could help cover a huge range of action, which we'll talk a little bit more later about what that can look like. And then critical action. The stage at which real world change is demanded and oppressive structures are challenged. So that is a much more a bigger piece of action. So that could be a personal action. So an individual action that they're taking, a group action. So maybe, mass demonstration, or not mass demonstration, that's mass social action, a small group action, a mass social action, which would be like a demonstration, or a digital action, which could be, a digital Twitter campaign or something like that. So that is, again, where there's a huge, a larger challenge to oppressive structures and things like that. Questions or thoughts when you hear these theoretical building blocks and how that relates to young people? Do you feel like your young people now in your programs or elsewhere get opportunities to do this, or that these things are easy for them to access in their experiences in your programs or out in the world at school? Okay, so we have these building blocks. What is the role of mentors? How does that relate? Well, I'll tell you. So yeah, they support in building these aspects, right? Because it's not always easy to do. Young people aren't necessarily best at that self-reflection piece. That's where, an adult a caring adult, of course, can be helpful in these components, especially on that self-reflection and moving into action. My husband's a teacher, so I hear stories of him helping kids do this all the time. So when there's mentor, especially a caring adult, to move to help kids do this, it can really be helpful to move kids through that thing. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today. How do we build these? How do I unclick? I'm not gonna do that. How do we build those these building blocks with a mentor, a young person by their side, and how do we incorporate that into our program bit by bit? So I want to talk a little bit about, so to go back, Oh, here we go. So we have this theoretical building blocks. On this next slide, Dr. Torrey and the writers of the supplement talk about how mentoring research has kind of not been serving young people in this critical way the past 30 years. And that's what this next slide is about. How has it been working against young people? This idea of problematizing young people, right? That youth are drains on society and the things. Positioning, again, well-off white adults as saviors. I know some of you may have been at our white saviorism training in December. It's a very popular narrative that we're always trying to disrupt. And right, we're always trying to disrupt it. Why doesn't this fade away? It is difficult. Limiting the types of mentoring program that gets studied in gold standard way that we know limits funding and opportunities for scaling work. Everyone who, put a 1 in the chat if you are always, fighting for funding. The idea of evidence-based programming and evidence-based curriculum and things like that is really difficult. And all of what those evidence-based programming, of course, is those things means it's been studied. And that's what funders always want, is that evidence and things like that. So that is really hard, I know, on you all, because then you have to adopt certain practices. And then a lot of you guys get cornered back into a corner about what you may be able to do with your programs because y'all need that funding. And I know that's very difficult. I used to work in programs, so please know that I truly I'm with you on that. Again, by avoiding examination of the root causes of problems, right? And that mentoring is as a solution instead of harder policy or system level choices, right? So I used to work at a program that was part of our intervention was addressing literacy, right? So we had youth in our program that were several grades behind in reading comprehension. So what is the real issue there, right? That schools, the school or the school system is not helping them stay on grade level with their reading comprehension. That's a system level problem. And this mentoring program is now, or this mentoring OST program, and now we're the intervention or the solution. Like that's, the math isn't matching, and it's again avoiding that root cause problem. And then by this last one, by frequently being sponsored by the same oppressive system. So that could be a funding issue, right? So where does our funding come from? Is it coming from systems that that maybe are also oppressive systems, from the juvenile justice system? I used to work at a program that got funding from the juvenile justice system. It felt weird. Or companies supporting mentoring program by not paying living wages to the people who work at that mentoring program. Also not great. Hold on. Jim, I see your message in the chat. And yes, we have that. Yes, that is available with this supplement materials. Great. So now we're going to move into the elements, or the EEP, or the standards, let me say, as it relates to critical mentoring. So I'm going to launch another poll. Well, so what, is anybody not familiar with the element of effective practice? If you are not familiar, drop a 1 in the chat. And it's okay, I'm not going to judge. Okay, totally cool. So the element of effective practice. Yes, Michael Molly, you can actually, you can send that now. So Michael Molly is about to send the element of effective practice checklist right now in the chat. And let's give you a little bit of background about the elements of effective practice for those who are not familiar. So the element of effective practice, as you can see in this image, this is the 4th edition. So this is a document that is, let research informed, as you see, by the National Mentoring Partnership, and that is best practices for mentoring programs. It's that is based on 6 standards. Those 6 standards being recruitment, screening of mentors, training, matching, monitoring and supporting those mentors, and closing those relationships. And it breaks each standard down into little bite size of what, and this checklist helps you, helps design exactly like a checklist of what each mentoring program should do based on each of those standards to be, again, kind of approved as you're following the best practices for mentoring. Sorry, very loud noises outside my window right now. So these, again, are rooted in research. This full document will, which I'll send after the call, this checklist is much more readable. This full document will go into, what the research really said about each of these practices, but this is really a national standard for how to create your mentoring program and to audit your mentoring program to ensure that you're having safe practices for young people, because a mentoring program's first job is always to keep young people safe, and to ensure that your program is best being served by mentors, that you're going to have the best possible outcomes for your young people, and that you're going to retain and train your mentors to the best of your ability. So simply said, these are the kind of minimum best, or like minimum standards of quality for a mentoring program. And it's really written for what a typical mentoring program, 1-to-1. And then there are all these supplements to the Elements of Effective Practice for niche programs. So e-mentoring, group practices, and now critical mentoring, and there's all different kinds of other ones for different niche groups. And now today we're going to explain the critical mentoring one. So I'm going to launch a poll about the 6 standards, and the poll is asking you, which standards do you, how do I launch my other poll? Oh, here we go. Which standards do you feel like you always want to work on the most as a program? So again, these standards are recruitment of mentors and mentees, screening of mentors and mentees, training, which also can apply to mentees as well, matching of mentors and mentees, monitoring and support of matches, and closure. I didn't launch it, so you couldn't see it. Which elements of the EEP, which is the acronym, which is what we'll be calling it moving forward, and you can pick more than one. So when you think about these standards, which do you want to work on the most, that you are thinking about most of the time, that you're thinking, we need to improve on this? What would be most helpful to spend some time on? I'll give it another 20 seconds. I'm taking quick notes. Okay. Everybody good? All right, I'm going to share these results. All right, so it's looking like, and I'm going to write this down as well. Monitoring and support, number 1. Training, recruitment, matching, closure, and screening. Okay, so I'm going to I want to give you an idea of how things are going to move moving forward. So how the supplement is set up for critical mentoring. In a typical supplement, it's set up in that it kind of adds extra things on that checklist that are specific to the critical mentoring. I mean, that are specific to the niche supplement. So it'll just kind of add ones that you need to add that are specific to STEM. So for STEM, it'll be like for recruitment, right? Recruit, gear your recruitment towards STEM professionals, right? For critical mentoring, they differ in that it shares that they don't think there's just one best way to write a mentoring program, right? They're more flexible. And then, and in addition, they want to be clear that there's no one way to run a mentoring program, and that their recommendations are more of a starting point. They've also framed it more throughout a series of questions that we should instead attempt to answer, rather than, again, specific guidelines. So really, it's positing as questions for your leaders, for your board, for you people here today, to answer and discuss, and really spend time discussing through, rather than, oh, this is a box for us to tick. And lastly, everything is based around how can I put young people at the forefront of the design, the implementation, and sustainability of this work. Again, young people at the front. And again, there's always more opportunities for putting youth in the lead of these program elements. So how can we do that? So the way I've designed the rest of, for us to look through these critical mentoring, these critical mentoring standards, is for us to look at the questions they posed against the original kind of standards and benchmarks that they relate to. But I want to first, I want to first kind of get an idea of what questions you have or concerns you have related to these standards that you are working on. So monitoring support came up as the standard with the most concerns. So anyone raise your hand, drop your question in the chat. When you're concerned about monitoring and support, what are you thinking? What do you want to know more about? What's of concern for your program as it relates to monitoring and support? I used to tell my boss all the time that monitoring and support programs want to know more about it. I did a training about it a year or two ago, and he was like, nobody cares about monitoring and support. And I was like, people do care. So yeah, tell me what you're thinking about as it relates to monitoring and support. So 56%. Oh, here. Yes, yeah. Being able to support my staff where they may be having some challenges connecting and strengthening the other areas. What do you mean exactly, Cassia?
Maybe sometimes just to see if even though they may be a good match, but it could be some teachable moments that I may can assist them both with in connecting.
Yeah. Totally understandable, right? Not when you don't have the huge pool of mentors to choose from, supporting a match that's not the 100% perfect match. Come on.
Hey, Renee, can you hear me?
Yes.
I was thinking with monitoring and support, so many of our programs, it's when we talk about critical mentoring and really allowing our mentees to process and to reflect, I think that really happens in the context of monitoring and support. And I think our programs have to make those spaces to allow those mentors and mentees to have those moments of reflection. And often, I think, as program leads and program directors, if we can help facilitate, it makes it a little bit easier for our mentors. That's what I was just thinking as far as the monitoring and support and why it's so critical in this particular context.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And so much of the time we're not concerned about, but in the monitoring support area, we're looking at retention of the mentor in that monitoring support. Like, how's your session going? This, that, and the other, because a young person is often going to stay in the program regardless, because they may not have a choice about whether in the program, right? Because they're a kid and their parent has placed them in the program. So, right, how do we make space for a mentee's feedback and their reflection on how a relationship is going and things like that? And you'll see that as well when we get to there. No, great question. Training. I feel like training comes up a lot, but where are you guys with training and as far as concerns and things for training? Because I would love for everyone to feel great about training their mentors. This is my dream for you all.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Clara. Training is a must. Training is a must, not with just your mentees and your mentors, but we tend to forget that sometimes we need, or maybe not sometimes, we also need to train parents as to expectations, support, acceptance, the whole bam. And so when you're developing your training programs, you have to put as much effort to each one of those groups.
Yeah.
And that's a means of sustaining the effectiveness of the program.
Yes. Great. Oh, thank you for sharing that. And that is a great point. And you'll see when we get to that section that in the original EEP, training of parents is considered an enhancement, as in a not needed for like that minimum standard of quality. But as it relates to critical mentoring, we're going to consider that a minimum standard of quality, including parents in that whole loop. And then lastly, I just want to take a question or concern around recruitment. Oh, I'm seeing things in the chat. I don't want to miss that. What is happening? Okay. I agree with providing training for parents. Yes. I'll also say too, as someone who used to provide training for parents, it helps provide buy-in. And then if a parent is like, I don't think you can do all this, like has that sows seeds of doubt, and then you prove that you can, then they're even more bought in. And it's great. Soraya, having a structured continuing education in different areas that can be beneficial to the effectiveness of mentors. Continuing education for mentors? Yes. So ongoing training and supplemental training. Yeah. They're trying to figure out what ongoing topics to share with mentors. Yes. And I think that's what there seems to be a discussion. Great. All right. So I want to move into these topics, and we'll spend a little bit more time on the monitoring, training, and recruitment. and I'll give you time to talk through those. So because it's structured a little differently, they've also named the standards a little bit differently as well, which I love. It makes it more personal, and it's the reality, right? So instead of recruitment, we're calling it finding and welcoming youth and families, which is what it is, right? So on the right, we have some of the benchmarks from the recruitment, which again, if you downloaded the checklist from the chat, if you can drop that again, Michael Molly, these are benchmarks from the recruitment standard as far as recruiting mentees. So engaging in recruitment strategies that realistically portray the benefits of the program, recruiting mentees that match the services. These ones that are starred are considered enhancements. It's publicly, the eligibility requirements are clear. Program encourages mentees to recruit needs that are services by the program. Okay, on the left, we have these questions that are critical mentoring, we'll say Dr. Toy's asking us specifically, wants us to consider. So how do we make our program goals and philosophy clear to youth and family, both in terms of the marketing materials and during initial orientations and community presentation? She's already getting, referring to that we are going to have orientations, or we are going to orientation, aka parent trainings, and community presentations. We're going to be in the community communicating what about program. How are we going to make that clear to youth and families? How can we find young people who best fit our vision and make them aware of the opportunity? Because right, is our program actually for everyone? And so often, again, it seems like we don't always have that choice, right? How can we refer youth and families to service providers if they're not a good fit for our program, for what we're offering? How can we make caregivers aware of the role we want them to play in this work? And how can we bring them in and make them feel included? So Dr. Carter, again, thank you for sharing that, right? How do we really including parents in this work from the very beginning, from this recruitment part? How can we empower youth to recruit their peers to the program? What does a word of mouth strategy look like? Maybe some of you are doing this, which is what I'd love to hear. What's the maximum number of youth that we can serve well? How do we handle it if the demand outpaces our capacity? Do any of us actually have that problem? So, Antoinette, did you mean to send that message privately?
No, I actually meant to send it to the group docs.
Oh, no, that's okay. So I'm going to read your message.
Okay.
Recruitment issues. When you have difficulty providing incentives that would interest emerging adults when you lack funding? What are ways to recruit mentees?
Okay,
cool. So I'm going to actually we're going to break out. So I'm going to ask you to bring that message to your group. So we're going to break out. Y'all, there is a function in Zoom now where I can beam this slide into your group. So I'm going to beam this slide into your group and ask that these questions on the left, these critical mentoring, recruiting mentees, recruiting young people to your program, and ask that you discuss these questions as it relates to your program as a group. Because I think some of these things maybe you have talked about, you are doing these things, you may not have talked about before, but you are dealing with, and just kind of work through together, bounce some ideas off each other about how are you finding and welcoming youth and families? How might you? Are you in this process? So let's take some time to do that. I'm going to break us up into groups now, and we will come back at 11:30. So I'm going to pause the recording for y'all. Welcome back. How did that go for you all, discussing through these questions as it relates to recruiting young people to your program?
So we're just getting warmed up, but it felt good to connect because there's so much to learn, even if the models are not identical. Yeah. I get so much strength. So this experience is always wonderful for me, just to hear other people's programs, because there's always something I gain. You know?
Yeah. Were these questions that you'd really considered before, or was it kind of new to work through these ideas? feel free to come off mute, drop in the chat.
I mean, for me, I make an annual recruitment plan, like I was telling the group, and I visit it either 3 or 4 times a year, and I see what's working and what's not. And so for the second bullet point that you have, so that's kind of something I explore on my own. I'm not expected to do it, but it's just something that helps me and guides me and keeps me focused, I guess.
Yeah. Great. Anyone else before we move on?
Like she said, we were kind of getting fired up, you know, the ball was getting rolling, and then I saw the countdown timer.
Oh, no.
And, you know, the sense of dread came over me. I'm like, oh my God.
Okay, well, I promise we will have more time to talk. There's so much time, or there's so much to cover in this, and I was just saying that I regretted that this isn't 2 hours. If you guys want to stay on, I'll stay with you. But yes, let's move on to recruiting mentors or finding and welcoming mentors. Can I ask someone to read the questions on the left side of the screen? Feel free to just come off mute.
What are the motivations and mindsets we are looking for in our volunteer mentors? What kinds of lived experience, education, or backgrounds will be helpful in doing this critical mentoring work? Are teaching, advocacy, or similar backgrounds a requirement? What other skills should mentors bring? What would be helpful in terms of participating in the structure and format of our mentoring sessions? For example, if offering a group model, is experience collaborating with other teachers, mentors, or supervising groups of a youth a priority?
Thank you. So again, these bullets on the right are on that checklist for recruiting mentors in the EEP. But when I was a mentor recruiter, for that first question, what are the motivations and mindsets we're looking for in volunteer mentors? I would have said they want to mentor, period. People who want to do it. But for you all, what would you consider for your entry to that? What are the motivation and mindsets we're looking for in our volunteer mentors?
I think for me, for that question, I think it's important for that mentor to be willing to give their time. I mean, you have to be willing to give your time to be able to pour into our mentees. So I think, you know, if I was doing like an interview process of, you know, recruiting mentors, that would be one of my biggest questions is, are you willing to give your time to truly invest and pour into our young people?
That's a great one, right? That time, that investment, right? Especially when we're thinking about what we're investing to build, and now thing like critical mentoring, that's an investment for sure. And chat elements, flexibility, consistency, and creativity, growth mindset, receptive feedback, self-reflection. Great. And I think these questions too might be helpful to do an exercise where, right, we're maybe writing out some different models of mentors that we're seeking to recruit. And maybe that helps us design our marketing and aim our marketing towards these different types of mentors that we're looking for, because it's never just one type that we're looking for, right? We want a diversity of mentors to expose our young people to. But right, we're talking about different lived experiences, plural, education, backgrounds, plural. Where are they? What do they look like? Cultural competency, right? Cultural humility. What are these different kinds of people we're looking for? Where are they? How does this marketing, these strategies, how do we get to them? These questions could help kind of guide an exercise in who these maybe ideal mentors are and what kind of practices, recruitment strategies could get to them. Great. Cool. So next, so this would be screening, program participation, and safety. This was at the bottom of your all's list, so we don't need to spend too much time on this, but of course, program participation and safety is very important. What I don't have on here are the very basic things like background checks and the like. But of course, these falls into things about the questions that we're asking during interviews and those kind of dialogue questions that also may help us find those mentors with a certain kind of backgrounds and things like that. I think as far as it goes to critical mentoring, the question that we want to consider the most, expectation setting and including caregivers in that process, to go back to what Dr. Carter said earlier. But lastly, how can we involve youth in interviewing and vetting prospective mentors? Does anybody so far include youth in interview processes or vetting for prospective mentors? And if so, would you like to share? Drop in the chat. Yeah, Christina, can you share?
Sure. Our program is a little different. We don't match one-to-one mentors. It's a mentor to a small group of young people. But when we interview our potential mentors, we actually have a group of young people who have been in the program who are part of that interview process. They help us design the questions. They help us, it's sort of a group interview and then individual questions. So we sort of engage the young people and pay them who've been in the program before. So they've had these mentors before in the past to really think about what were the components of the mentors they had that were most effective and loved, and how do we ensure that we're asking questions during our interview process to get at those skills or philosophies or ways of being. And then those young people are part of our conversations after, when we determine who we are going to hire.
Great, awesome. I love to hear that. All right, I want to get you guys have opportunity to have another discussion since you all were just getting into it, and I'd love to give you guys a full 10 minutes. So let's get into training, which is next, but which they have phrased as the preparation and teaching. So, but we'll move into preparation and teaching of mentors, but of course, preparation and teaching of young people, right? At the program I was at, we were a big proponent of preparing young people, which really was, of course, about expectations and level setting. But as far as for critical mentoring, right, how can we include young people in preparing our mentors, but also preparing our mentees? What kind of preparation will youth and caregivers, going back to Dr. Carter again, need? How can we prepare them to be leaders in the program? And how can we prepare our young people to know how to not use their mentors? I feel like use their mentors as tools sounds odd. How to utilize their mentorship opportunity in their own development, make the most of that experience. So would there be value in having mentors and youth go through a training opportunity together? What might that look like? But I want to move on to preparation and teaching of mentors. I'm going to move you back into your same groups, and I'll beam this to you guys. And we have, again, these questions on the left from our critical mentoring, and the benchmarks on the right from the EEP. So I'm going to open those rooms again. I'll give you plenty of time, and we will get back together soon. Pause that. Welcome back, everyone. I hope I didn't cut anybody off this time. Let me know how that discussion went for you all. What came up when we're talking about preparation and teaching our mentors as it relates to critical mentoring? Drop in the chat. Feel free to come off mute. What's on our minds as far as how can we effectively prepare our mentors for working with our young people? Here's the chat. That's so interesting, Shane. Mentoring programs deserve workforce development funding for the work they do with mentors. Yo, I mean, is not mentoring, I mean, it's just mentoring down the line, right? From leadership to program staff to mentors to young people. It's just all of that development, personal development, all the way down. And I think you make a great point in that it is becoming more and more like that, as far as people who are looking for mentoring opportunities are looking for that kind of development opportunity from that as well. Providing clear roles of responsibilities of mentor, mentee, mentor coordinator for clarity and understanding. Yes, clarity of expectations and roles, I always say, starts at recruitment, but training has to be like the place where we're beating it in, but the final place where they're hearing it for the third, fourth, or fifth time. It has to be so clear, and they're getting that information. It needs to be roles and responsibilities, so important. And again, that young people are getting that too, parents are getting that too at this part, and mentors as well. Great. What about understanding key concepts like intersectionality and honoring diversity? Things that might not come from those practices. Oh yeah. Thea's work has a great strategy, has a great approach for strategic recruitment, intensive pre-service training once the right candidates have been identified. Great.
Yeah, greetings. I don't mind sharing. So
yeah, please.
Sharing with Shane, I'm Theo. I work at Montgomery College for Achievement Promise Academy, and we're over we have academic coaching for students. And I was just telling Shane about our 8-hour pre-service we have for kids that are broken down over 4 sessions, and also how we intentionally recruit for our students by going to like community organizations such as fraternities, Hispanic speaking, we're Hispanic speaking institutions. So we try to find these diverse like fraternities and sororities in the area and really try to sell them on academic coaching and try to recruit that way to really meet our dynamic student needs.
Great. No, that sounds awesome and wonderful, right? And like, obviously you found, right, that how long does pre-match training need to be? The EP would say that it would need to be at least 2 hours, but that would be determined by each organization. What is it going to reasonably take to cover the content for everyone to be on the same page? That's going to vary by organization. Caitlin talked about fitting the needle between preparing and overwhelming, right? Yeah, the wide variety thing that may come up. Reach out to your staff asking a question first. You're right. Right. What do you absolutely need to know before your first day? Right. What might be good to know 2 months in, or right, may come up that you may just need to ask a question. Special topics. Great. Wonderful. All right, y'all. So it is 11:57. I've come to realize we're not even close to being done covering this topic. It is huge. The EEP and the standards of the EEP are a huge topic. And even though this is just a supplement, it is a huge supplement. And this part, just covering the standards of the EEP, is only a portion of what the critical mentoring supplement has to offer and what I've shown you. And so while you guys are in the breakout room, I've scheduled another session for us to finish the standards so you guys can have more opportunity to discuss how these standards can apply to your program as it relates to critical mentoring. B, for us to explore what else the critical mentoring supplement has to offer, which is a ton, which I haven't even shown you yet. And so that session is going to take place on February 21st. I'm dropping the link in the chat so you can register now. We can come back together. We're going to have more opportunities for you guys to have discussions. We're going to go over the basic critical mentoring logic model. We'll go over evaluation and program design. And then we're going to go over some of the special multimedia aspects of the critical mentoring supplement that you all can use with your staff, with your team, with your mentors. And it's awesome and cool. So yeah, it's the best. So please come back and join me then so we can really get even further into the meat of this. And I will still reach out and send you the resources in case you can't make it to that. Mekomale is sending the link to the Critical Mentoring Supplement website in case you can't come back either, and you can click through on your own. It is multiple pages, and like I said, a multimedia event supplement. I really hope that I am able to see you on the 21st so we can continue this conversation, and I appreciate you being a part of this session. I really hope to see you again so we can keep this conversation going. I've said previous sessions many, many times, critical mentoring is the future. This is it. We made it. We're talking about it now. Let's keep the conversation going. I hope to see you on the 21st. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will talk to you all soon. Thanks, everybody.